Welcome to Team SNG deck profile. Today we're going to be doing the Ancient Warriors deck profile. Now this has gotten a couple new cards in Blazing Vortex, which is why we're going to be updating it. While I got your attention, I'd like to ask you guys, leave us a like, leave us a comment, leave us a subscribe. We are almost at 200 subscribers, guys. At the time of recording this, we're at about 190. Once we get to 200, I got a huge announcement that I am so excited to tell you about, so help us get to 200. What I love about the Ancient Warriors deck is its ability to go first and go second. And because of that, you have a lot of flexibility in the way that you build it. So what I've done here is I've built a going first deck with the aims of controlling the board state on your opponent's turn so that you can OTK them on turn 3. However, I have all the cards to make it go second, so after I talked about the extra deck, I'm going to talk about some cards that you can definitely swap in and swap out so as to make the deck go second. And the benefit of that is actually there's not enough of them that you couldn't run all of those options in your side deck for round 2 and round 3. That all being said, let's get into it. First card we're going to talk about is our Ancient Warriors Masterful Sun Muo. He's the main searcher for the deck, and what he lets you do is send a card from your hand or face-up spell trap from your side of the field to search your deck for an Ancient Warriors monster and add it to the hand. So that's really useful because it lets you search any of your Ancient Warriors, and several of them act as extenders, so that can be really good in the sense that it does help you set up plays later on. On top of that, if an Ancient Warriors monster was to activate its effect while this card's on the field, you get to target a monster on your opponent's side of the field and bounce it back to the hand. So you can take stuff off your opponent's board on their turn using a lot of the Ancient Warriors that now have quick effects. On top of him, we do run our Ancient Warriors Graceful Shugong. Now Shugong, much like our Ancient Warriors Masterful Samoa, can send a continuous speller trap from your side of the field to the graveyard. And in exchange for that, it can search you out an Ancient Warriors spell trap and add it to the hand. Again, like Sun Muo, it has an effect that goes off when you activate an Ancient Warriors monster effect while it's on the field. And Graceful Shugong can target and negate a monster effect on your opponent's side of the field until the end of the turn. So that does it for our Water Ancient Warriors. On to our wins. Now there's quite a few wins that we run. The first is our Virtuous Liu Schwab. Now this is a typically going second card. It's really good if your opponent has lots of monsters on the field because you can send a card from your hand to special summon an Ancient Warrior from the deck. The other effect this does though is if an Ancient Warrior monster on your side of the field is involved in a battle, you get to draw a card from your deck. And so this will let you trigger your Masterful Sun Muo and your Shugong on your opponent's turn if they declare an attack against anything on your side of the field. On top of that, this and our Masterful Sun Muo cannot be targeted for attacks so long as we control another Ancient Warrior monster. So if you have both on the field at the same time, they act as a dupe block, making it so your opponent cannot target either of them by battle. The next Wind Ancient Warrior that we run is typically what you're going to be searching out with your Sun Muo, and that is 2 copies of Ancient Warriors Ingenious Sujay Kong. Now what Sujay Kong will do is he will let you send a face-up Ancient Warriors spell trap from your side of the field to the grave to negate the effect of a spell or trap that your opponent has activated. This is a quick effect, so again it triggers your Water Ancient Warriors on your opponent's turn. On top of that though, if you do have our Virtuous Liu Schwab on the field, he doesn't just negate your opponent's spell traps, he has the ability to negate a monster effect. So it is really nice to have both of these on the board at the same time, but typically you're just going to have one. Next in our win lineup is one of our main attackers that the deck has access to in our Valiant Zhang Day. If you control 2 Ancient Warrior monsters on the field, special summon this. That's really nice because he becomes a really big body that your opponent has to deal with. On top of that, he has the ability that he gains 300 attack for each monster your opponent controls during your turn only. So he becomes a big OTK card if your opponent's built a really big board against you. But if your opponent has more monsters than you can also activate his effect in your main phase, and that will let him attack twice instead of once. So again, going second, this is a really good card to have. Going first, it's a nice extender, and it becomes a body your opponent's going to have to deal with. Finally, for our win lineup is our Ancient Warriors Loyal Guanyan. Our Ancient Warriors Loyal Guanyan is the typical going second card. And so I'm only running 1 copy because I'm hoping to go first with this build that I've got for you today. Now what Loyal Guanyan does is if your opponent controls monsters and you don't, you can special summon him from the hand. And if your opponent controls more monsters than you, you can target a monster on your opponent's side of the field and you can destroy it. So it does help you start breaking your opponent's board, but it also helps you get your board going without having to utilize your normal summon. That does it for our Wind Ancient Warriors. Now onto our more flammable Ancient Warriors. First one of these is our Ancient Warriors Zhang Yuan. Now we run 3 copies of him. He is so useful in the deck because he acts as a bit of a hand trap. If you control an Ancient Warrior monster and it battles an opponent's monster, you can special summon this from the hand during the damage step and decrease your opponent's monster's attack by 1,000 points. On top of that, if a card your opponent controls is destroyed, then you can target another card on your opponent's side of the field and destroy it as well. So you can utilize this really well to help break your opponent's board, and when it's partnered up with something like your Loyal Guan Yang, it really does some serious damage. On top of that, this card does protect all your other Ancient Warriors from destruction by battle, meaning that your opponent's going to have to get rid of this before it gets rid of the rest of your board. So it acts so usefully as a hand trap that maybe your opponent doesn't know about if you've managed to draw into it, but you can also search it out using a couple cards in the deck, such as our Masterful Sun Muo. Now onto the big boss monster that the deck has access to, and that is our Ancient Warriors Ambitious Chao Dai. Now, again, this isn't a card you necessarily need to go into because the deck has so many ways of removing your opponent's board and putting bodies on our own that really we should be able to OTK them on turn 3 and disrupt them on their turn. But Chao Dai does give us the ability to really give our opponents some trouble because it can't be targeted for card effects while it's on the field, as long as we control other Ancient Warrior monsters. And it can't be destroyed by card effects as long as we control other Ancient Warrior monsters. The way we get this onto the field is if a card our opponent controls is destroyed, we send a card from our hand to the grave, and we special summon him to the field. Also, if he then destroys a card by battle, we get to special summon that card to our side of the field in defense mode. So, again, it's a really good card for going second. Even on turn 3, he does give you a really good option. And even going first, he can become a boss monster your opponent's going to focus on, drawing fire from some of your other Ancient Warriors that maybe you have kicking around on the field. So that does it for our Fire Ancient Warriors. On to the final Ancient Warrior that we run, and this is the Rebellious Lu Feng. Now, Lu Feng is so useful in the deck because of the fact he acts as an extra extender, but he gives us the ability to disrupt our opponent by destroying something on our opponent's side of the field. What he does is, during the main phase as a quick effect, he can destroy the monster on our opponent's side of the field with the largest attack. Now, again, this is another quick effect that the Ancient Warriors have access to, and because he's an Ancient Warrior, he can trigger our Sun Muo and our Shugong to basically disrupt our opponent's entire play. Not only by destroying something, but also by triggering a negate and a bounce. So he becomes a really useful card that acts as a great disruption for us. There is one drawback to him though. If, during the end phase, you don't control the highest attack monster on the field, he can be a bit treacherous, and he'll switch sides. However, if you control him and the Ancient Warrior Link monster, he'll be sitting at a whopping 3,300 attack, so your opponent's going to have to have been able to play through potentially 2 disruptions and get something that big on the field. It's not totally implausible, but it's not the easiest thing to do. On to the last monster we run 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Now, I'm not a massive fan of hand traps, but they are part of the game these days, and Ash Blossom's definitely the most versatile. The one thing I do need to say about this is you need to be careful about using your Ash Blossom going second. If you have Ash Blossom in your opening hand, you probably do not want to search your Lu Feng out of your deck. And that is just because you can't use your Ash Blossom and your Lu Feng on the same turn, because Lu Feng locks you into Ancient Warrior monster effects for the entire turn if you activate his effect. So, if you've got your Ash Blossom, you could search out your Chao Dai or your Valiant Zhang Dai or something, but don't search out your Lu Feng, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to use him and Ash Blossom together. Now those are for our monsters. On to our spell traps. So the first spell that we run is the Rota for the deck, and that is our Ancient Warriors Saga 3 Visits. If you normally special summon an Ancient Warrior while this is on the field, you get to search an Ancient Warrior from your deck. If this card is sent to the graveyard from the field, you get to special summon an Ancient Warrior from your hand. So this benefits off of all of the sending that the Ancient Warriors like to do, letting you build your board, which is really useful. Next is our Ancient Warriors Saga Sun Liu Alliance. Now this acts as a bit of a skill drain on your opponent, and that is because of the fact that if you control two Ancient Warriors of different attributes, you get to actually declare an attribute and negate all face-up monster effects of the same attribute. Now on your opponent's turn, it gives you an additional effect of if your opponent special summons a monster, you get to increase all your Ancient Warrior monsters by 300 for each Ancient Warrior monster on the field. So it lets your Ancient Warriors get really, really big. Again, making them a problem for your opponent to deal with. Now, this can also trigger on your turn if you activate an Ancient Warrior monster's effect. So you do need to be aware that you're going to need to activate this on summon, but as long as you're paying attention, that shouldn't be any difficulty. Finally, I run 2 copies of Ancient Warriors Saga Borrowing of Arrows. Now, Borrowing of Arrows gives your monsters the ability to effectively be Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. You can target a monster on your opponent's side of the field, and an Ancient Warrior monster you control. You decrease your opponent's monster's attack by half, and your Ancient Warrior gains that attack, so it lets your Ancient Warriors become really big. If this card is sent to the graveyard, while you control 2 Ancient Warriors with different attributes, you get to place, face up in your spell trap card zone, a continuous Ancient Warrior spell or trap. Now, we don't run any of the South by East Wind in this version of the deck because it's a really good card going second, but not necessarily going first. So I don't feel the need to run it in a going first version of the deck. Now we also run some fire formations just to make the deck a bit more consistent. The first of those obviously being our fire formation Tenki, and the other one being our fire formation Tenzu. Tenki letting you search out your Shugong and your Graceful Sun Muo and your Virtuous Liu Schwab or whatever level 4 you need. Really good. Fire formation Tenzu, giving you that extra normal summon, gives you the ability to extend a little further, and that extra extension can get you further into your plays and give you a more substantial board to end on. This is for our spells. Onto our traps. Now, we have quite a significant trap lineup because, as I say, this is a going first version of the deck. And so, setting a trap and just leaving it for our opponent to worry about, it's always quite a good play. First of these is the original Ancient Warrior trap. I run 2 copies of Ancient Warrior Saga Defensive Changban. Now, Defensive Changban is really useful because of the fact that it has an effect that activates on field, but it also has one that activates in the grave. So if on your turn you have Changban in the hand and you don't know if you're going to want to set it, you can send it to the grave using one of your Ancient Warrior monster's effects to give you a plus. And then on your opponent's turn, you can banish it from the grave to special summon an Ancient Warrior from your deck. So you can then create that dupe block I talked about earlier with Virtuous Liu Schwab and Masterful Sun Muo. Ancient Warrior's Defensive Changban is a really good card in that sense. If you activate the card on your opponent's turn from the field, what you can do is send it to the graveyard, and your opponent cannot attack Ancient Warrior monsters. And seeing as that's all it's going to be on the field, they're out of luck. They ain't going to be dealing an attack to you at all, which is really nice as well. Now, much like our Defensive Changban, our Chivalrous Path also gives us the ability to utilize it from the graveyard and give ourselves some extra protection on the field. So Chivalrous Path will let us banish it from the graveyard to negate the activation of a card that would target one of our Ancient Warriors on the field. On top of that, you can send this card from the field to the grave to protect one of our Ancient Warriors from being destroyed by battle. Now, you don't have to do this on 2 separate turns, so if you do have this on your field, and you send it to the grave to protect one of your Ancient Warrior monsters from battle, you can also protect it from card effect later in the turn. It does have another effect which isn't really super relevant, and that is the ability to produce a token if your opponent special summons a monster. But, as I say, that doesn't really come up very often, so, frankly, it's really here, in my opinion, for the 2 protection effects that it can grant in your field. Now, we do run a few other spells just to give the deck some extra negation. Not that the deck's going to have a ton of trouble with negating, but it's nice to give ourselves that extra protection. The first of these is 2 copies of Lost Wind, and the second of these is 2 copies of Titanicider. The way the game is right now, Titanocyder is almost always going to be live because of the very simple fact that so many decks are reliant on their extra deck. And if you're playing against an opponent that's not reliant on their extra deck, you do have Lost Wind just to give you that extra negation, and put your opponent in a weird situation where they've got something that's now no use to them by card effect, and also probably not getting over your stuff by attack. The reason I like running these, though, is because of their ability to set themselves back to the field if your opponent special summons a monster in the case of Lost Wind, or special summons a monster from the extra deck in the case of Titanocyder, meaning you don't get one use out of them, but you typically are going to get two. And that does it for our main deck. Now onto our extra deck. The first card that we run in our extra deck is the Ancient Warriors Link Monster. And that is 3 copies of Ancient Warriors Oath, double Dragon Lords. All it takes to make your Dragon Lords is 2 Beast Warrior type monsters, including a Wind Ancient Warrior monster. So you do need to be aware that you need to get that Wind monster on the field ASAP. Whether it's your Valiant Zhang Dai, your Loyal Guan Yang, or your Sujie Kong, or even your Liu Schwab. Any of them will do. You just need one of them and another monster on field to go into this. When this card is summoned, you get to search out of your deck any Ancient Warriors card, and that can be a spell, that can be a trap, that can be a monster, and so that gives you the versatility to search out anything you need. Also, you can send a card from your hand or field to the grave to target a monster on your opponent's side of the field and bounce it back to the hand. Now again, another quick effect. This is so good because again, it triggers other things. And while this card is on the field, every Ancient Warrior monster on the field gains 500 attack. So I know it looks like it's a measly 1100 attack monster, but actually it's 1600 at least. Now, the rest of the extra deck is totally up to you, but this is what I'm running right now. Currently, I am running a Nightmare package. Just because it's some extra options, it puts some of our traps in the grave, potentially, which gives them the ability to be utilized from there. Stuff like that. You could totally replace this. You could put in a Tri-Brigade package if you wanted, but I like the Nightmare package. It's some versatility, and it does give us the ability to dismantle an opponent's board if we need to. Next, we run 2 copies of the Tiger King, which will let you search out your Tenki or your Tenzu when it's XC summoned. You could also detach a material from it to negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls. So again, it's another skill drain, and it could let you do some interesting things going second. But going first, it's not really what you're looking for. Now, I also run quite a robust rank 4 package with our number 37 Hope Woven Dragon, Spider Shark, our Light Dragon Agnister, our Exciton Knight, and our Abyss Dweller. So this lets you control the graveyard, this lets you blow up a field, this lets you send a card without targeting, and this just gives you the ability to run over some stuff. Although frankly, if you're not going into your Ancient Warriors, you may find yourself better off going into our little Utopia package, into our Utopia of the Lightning. The reason I run this Utopia Ray is just to give Utopia the Lightning not 1, but 2 chances with its attack. So that does it for the deck. Now, as I said, I'm going to talk to you guys about what you can do and what you can change out to make the deck a going second variant. So first of all, what are you going to want to add if you're going second? Well, probably another copy of your Loyal Guan Yang, because at the end of the day, he's probably the best play you got when you're going second. On top of him, you're going to want 2 copies of the South by East Wind. Now, South by East Wind is a really useful card in the sense that it makes it so your opponent can't react to any of your Ancient Warriors so long as it's sent from the field to the grave. And it gives all your Ancient Warriors the ability that if they declare an attack, they automatically destroy that monster. So it can be really useful to help you break an opponent's board without any disruptions when you go second. Then we also run 2 copies of Gamma Seal, because Kaijus are always good, and this is the smallest one, so it makes it the easiest to get rid of. And you can have a lot of fun with it by bouncing it back to your own hand and using it again. And finally, one of the better going second cards we got access to is our Raigeki. Now, you could also run Dark Ruler No More. There's no reason that you couldn't. But the one problem with Dark Ruler No More is you can't deal battle damage. And this deck, when it goes second, kind of wants to OTK. Now, what you're going to take out is probably 2 Lost Winds and 2 Titanociders. And then on top of that, you're probably also going to want to take out 1 Defensive Changban and 1 Chivalrous Path. And the reason for this is these are trap cards and a little too slow when you're going second. Now, when you're going first, it's great to have these traps because they act as extra disruptions, but going second, you don't necessarily want them in your opening hand. Don't get me wrong, they can still give you the protection and be really viable that way. But that's why we keep 2 in the deck, but we can take 2 of them out because we don't need them as much and they can be searched with our Link Monster and with our Shugong. At the end of the day, I think this deck is really powerful, and it does have a lot of consistency. It's got lots of searching capabilities with our Ancient Warriors, Masterful Sun Muo, our Double Dragon Lords, our 3 Visits, and even our Tenki. All 4 of these will let you search your deck for whatever it is that you need to get your combos going, or to continue extending, which is really useful. So your ability to extend it to some really powerful monsters is really good. Something like your Rebellious Lu Feng and Valiant Zhang Dai can definitely give yourself some big bodies that your opponent's going to have to be thinking, ooh, gotta deal with them ASAP. And the nice thing I've got to say about our Lu Feng and our Double Dragon Lords is that the 2 of them have quick effects, which will help us trigger our Sun Muo's secondary effect as well. Talking about triggering our secondary Sun Muo's effect, our inbuilt hand trap in our Zhang Yuan is also really useful for doing this. But sometimes hand traps just don't cut it, and so we're in a situation where we're running not 1, but 2 Ancient Warrior traps that give the deck the ability to disrupt our opponent and protect our own board. So that being said, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Make sure you leave us a like, leave us a comment, leave us a subscribe. Help us get to 200 because I am so excited to reveal what I've got planned for us. And I'm really excited about the way this channel's going. That being said, I'd like to thank you for your time. And I'll see you guys at the next video.